Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Kiorkof, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be conducting my very first 2020 fantasy football mock draft of the season. And yes, I've been keeping tabs with all the different metas that have taken place this offseason, whether it was prior or after the NFL draft, prior or after free agents found new homes this offseason. But either way, I think now that we're almost to the cusp of the midway July point, I believe it's finally mock draft season. So hopefully you're ready to learn some new strategies and approaches to our 2020 fantasy football drafts, because I'm ready. Either way, today we're going to be doing a 12-team half PPR draft, 1 quarterback, 1 flex, 6 bench positions, a kicker and a defense, and we'll be drafting from the number 12 overall spot. Now, I kind of had a little bit of a thought process there because everyone typically wants to have an early pick, especially this season, but that's been the case over the last couple of years. I mean, we go back to 2017, everyone wanted to have either Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, Ezekiel Elliott as their first 4 picks. Last season, everyone wanted to make sure that they had either Saquon or McCaffrey or Alvin Kamara, Zeke. The top 4 picks have always been stud blue chip players, but I think this year there's potentially even 6 guys that are blue chip players that can be drafted, and a lot of people want top 6 picks. Now, when you sit at the end of the draft board and you don't have the pick of the litter, and everyone kind of determines where your draft is going to proceed, it's your job at the number 12 pick to then set the tempo with the double picks and then going back around. So I'm going to kind of give you guys different strategies, different approaches, double RBs, maybe double wide receivers, a little bit more of a balance when to draft a QB early. I'm going to go through a bunch of different strategies that I've learned from this offseason and kind of just implement them quickly, right? I'm going to do it like it's quick chess. Each draft will take 5 minutes tops. I'll give you guys my breakdown of each of the selections I make, just a quick thought process on it. But outside of that, that's basically it. Now, when I talk about strategies, that's pretty much something that I focused on entirely this offseason. You know, a lot of people were asking me, Andrew, where have you been? A lot of people went to the comment section, Andrew, where are you? When are you coming back? Well, I spent a lot of this offseason with a professional drafter, someone who's been putting together dynasties for the last couple of years. They've been putting together dynasties in terms of rosters and decision making and selections in drafts. So that's who I've basically been following this offseason. So to kind of give you some perspective of where I've been talking to my sensei as an apprentice, Nike the dog. That's correct. I've been in Bill Belichick's home, but I haven't been talking to Bill Belichick and picking his brain. I've been picking Nike the dog's brain because, to be honest, he is the brains behind the operations. He is the reason Cam Newton sits in New England now and why Tom Brady is down in Tampa Bay. All in all, the way that I see it, Nike the dog has been a very great impression on me this offseason. We've talked a lot about different strategies, different approaches. In fact, he even gave me his personal number that anytime I needed to, I could give him a ring, ask him who the best decision-making, selection was, and he'd go ahead and let me know. But regardless, I've been learning a lot. Hopefully, I can imbue the knowledge that I've gathered from Nike the dog onto you guys this offseason. But either way, it's time to mock. I'm ready to go. Let's look at where our draft has proceeded. Typically, 8 running backs come off the board in the first round and 4 wide receivers. Unfortunately, in this specific scenario that we're doing here on fantasypros.com with their draft simulator, again, the draft simulator is random at times, right? A different variation every time. You're never going to have 2 of the same drafts. It's very unlikely. In this specific scenario, we had ourselves with already 8 running backs coming off the board and only 2 wide receivers. Now, my 2 favorite wide receivers are gone. Would I consider going them? It depends. When we look at what's available on the board, I mean, there's still great talent. Joe Mixon, Tyreek Hill, Julio Jones, Hopkins, Nick Chubb. I mean, it's really hard for me to think that I'm going to skip out on a running back right now because, truth be told, if 8 running backs already went, I'm going to be the 9th running back, taken off the board. By the time the draft goes away from me and comes back, 22 selections are going to happen. What's going to happen in those 22 selections? Most likely running backs are going to come off the board. And it is going to leave me with potentially guys that are in this area where it's Melvin Gordon's, Le'Veon Bell's, David Johnson's, and, James Conner's. Do I want that as my RB2? Probably not. If I can go ahead and draft 2 running backs right now, I think that pretty much sets the tempo for this draft and leaves me in a pretty decent spot. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit up my 2 favorite backs on this board as of right now. Joe Mixon, Nick Chubb at the end of the first, that seems like a steal to me. But we'll go ahead and see how this draft proceeds and how I can potentially approach the rest of the way through. Now, looking at the available players at the running back position, Clyde Edwards, great running back, Todd Gurley, great running back, but they have a lot of uncertainty. I'm not sure if Clyde Edwards is going to be the starting running back for the Chiefs. Again, Damian Williams is a guy that was a monster in the playoffs the last 2 seasons and has been relied upon in this offense entirely. Todd Gurley, is he healthy? I'm not sure. Melvin Gordon, is he an RBBC? I'm not sure. There's a lot of questions around these guys that used to be automatic picks. Now we have to think about where we're going. 2 quarterbacks, 2 tight ends were taken. We really can't address those right now. I'm not going to take a quarterback in the 3rd round when I can certainly wait for a guy like Drew Brees later, maybe in the 8th or 9th round for him. In terms of wide receivers, there's a lot of talent left. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. I want to kind of tell you a little bit of my strategy for tight ends. I only draft my first tight end after maybe the 10th or 9th best wide receivers off the board, because typically Travis Kelce is not going to put up more points than the 9th best wide receiver on average every season. So Travis Kelce being drafted where he was, just not a great pick. But overall, where do I want to draft a tight end? My tight end 3 at this moment in time is Mark Andrews. Do I think he is going to be better than some of these wide receivers? Sure. But I think if I draft 2 wide receivers right now because of what I see on the board in terms of talent, I'm pretty excited. So I'm going Cooper Kupp. That's not even a decision-making process I have to think about. Cooper Kupp is an automatic. Now it sits between Mark Andrews and one of the available wide receivers. Sure, Juju Smith sits as my number 12 wide receiver. I have very high opinions on a Calvin Ridley at this current juncture. As of right now, I'm going to go Calvin Ridley because, again, it is a mock draft. I want to see what kind of roster I can construct with the different variations. Mark Andrews, Juju Smith, Zach Ertz all came off the board immediately after my second selection there. I could have definitely went with a running back, but again, we can do that with a different draft. There are still great available running backs, a la David Johnson. That's probably where I'm going right now. Look at the tight end position. Darren Waller's still there. I really like Tyler Higbee. I really like Hayden Hurst. I can go ahead and wait on those. So I can continue to take another great wide receiver here, continue to bolster depth. I'm going to draft David Johnson. I now have 3 great running backs, in my opinion, that are all starters on their respective teams. And I even got a thumbs up from Fantasy Pros. And I have 2 good wide receivers who I believe heavily in this season. Now, where do I go? I could potentially draft another running back like Devin Singletary or DeAndre Swift or Cam Akers and take the gamble on it. But I think with having 3 running backs who are going to start for potentially the entire season, unless they have a bye week, I don't really need to address another running back. It's either a wide receiver or a tight end or a quarterback. Again, like I mentioned, I'm going to wait on quarterback. So then that leads us to the tight end or wide receiver position. Of the available guys at wide receiver, I really do like Brandon Cooks. But after Brandon Cooks, it becomes a lot of uncertainty. And if I let this round go away from me, and I let 22 picks come in between me and potentially drafting Brandon Cooks in the 7th, I don't think he's going to come back. And I'm looking at the available talent that's below Brandon Cooks, whether it's John Brown, Deontay Johnson, Jamison Crowder. I like Deontay Johnson. I love Jamison Crowder. But a lot of these guys aren't going to be weekly studs, but I only need them as a wide receiver 3 potentially. So what I could do here is go ahead, lock down one of my, I could really manipulate this draft. And I think that's what I'm going to potentially do here. Typically, I don't think the picks would have went in the direction that it did, but I think I'm going to manipulate it in a certain way, okay? At this moment in time, I'm going to go Michael Gallup here, or Julian Edelman. Okay, you know what? Give me a second. Yes, Nike. Yeah. I'm wondering, are you guys going to feed Julian Edelman the ball this year? I know you're just like the draft expert and stuff like that, but are you going to feed him? Yeah. Okay. Just needed to make sure. Yeah, sir. Okay, thank you. All right, bye. Okay, so, he has a little bit of a bias. He said that he's going to be the best wide receiver in the league this year. But unfortunately, I know it's still a tough decision to make. At this moment in time, I'm going to go Michael Gallup. Lock down my 3rd wide receiver with guys that I'm already very confident in. It's going to come back to me. I need to address tight end. I need to address quarterback. to an extent here. So let's go ahead and let's see what's available at quarterback. Drew Brees still on the board. Josh Allen still is a rushing quarterback still available, but he has his inconsistencies here and there. Let's look at the tight end position. Guys like Hayden Hurst that I'm very confident in are on the board. I think it is time to finally pull the trigger on a tight end. I'm going Hayden Hurst here. I'm locking him down. I'm continuing to bolster up my roster. Now, let's see how many teams in a one quarterback league have already drafted a quarterback. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so considering there are 7 of the 12 teams that have taken a quarterback, there is a potential that if I let this draft go away from me, we could see Drew Brees get snagged away from me almost immediately, and that could definitely hurt me. But when I'm looking at the construction of some of these rosters, I really do have to go ahead and put it on the line. I got to look at running backs. I got to see what's available. If there is a running back here that potentially could be a difference maker, then I'm going to go in and definitely make that decision right now. James White, I really do like in terms of a receiving option with Cam Newton, similar to how Christian McCaffrey and him produced. Oh, but Brandon Cooks is still here. No shot. It's not even close. I'm taking Brandon Cooks, the number 1 wide receiver of that offense. Again, that's a quick decision I just made. I had to make the decision. I had to come to the conclusion, and I'm happy I did, because once this draft has came back to me, Drew Brees is still on the board. I'm locking him down in the 9th because I love drafting late quarterbacks, especially in comparison to some of these other teams who are doing it far earlier than I. Again, they drafted him in the 7th, a lot of 7th round quarterbacks, but I stayed patient. I built more depth in my lineup. I'm confident with that. Looking at the running back position and the available players here, who came off the board as running backs. A lot of guys came off. Tevin Coleman, who's going to be the starter there. Now that Raheem Mostert has been asking for his contract to be reconstructed, but it's not happening. So he might get traded. But there's some talent here. Phillip Lindsay could play a good role. Kerryon Johnson might still be the starter. These are guys that could play some depth on my team. I don't mind Phillip Lindsay whatsoever. I don't mind Alexander Mattison as a handcuff to a guy that drafted Dalvin Cook in the first round. Dalvin Cook might hold out. He might wait. Looking at wide receivers, I love Jamison Crowder. He's the number 1 in he's the number 1 quarterback. He's the number 1 wide receiver in my opinion in terms of targets and opportunity in New York. Let me look at quarterbacks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm the 10th. I'm worried that if I do not draft Mr. Drew Brees now, it's going to go away and come back, and I'm going to be left with a lesser quarterback. But again, Tom Brady's not a bad quarterback, but I just prefer having Drew Brees on roster at this moment in time in comparison. So we're just going to make a quick decision here. I want to go ahead and build more depth at the running back position. I'm going ahead and I'm going to trust in the potential of one of these 2 guys that are in their respective RBBCs still being able to produce. I think Phillip Lindsay's still a guy that can produce every year. I'm going to draft him here in my 10th round. Again, 10th round typically are guys that are handcuffs or backup running backs. Again, look, Latavius Murray, Joshua Kelly, Duke Johnson, Darrell Henderson. These are backup running backs that are handcuffs that, okay, they can only produce if, in fact, the starter's injured. I just drafted a running back that was a top 12 guy in 2018 and was still a top 16 to 20 running back last season. Phillip Lindsay, sure, will have the competition of Melvin Gordon, but I think this offense wants to run the ball so much that Phillip Lindsay still gets opportunity. I think he's a great selection for me here at this moment in time. Looking at wide receiver help that I could potentially ask upon here, and tight end depth. Tight end depth is not going to move. We've sat through 10 rounds, in my opinion, building a very balanced roster. 4 running backs, 4 wide receivers, a tight end, and a quarterback. The rest of the way is now depth. In the following selections, I'm just drafting bench upside, and also I'm going to avoid, like many of these teams have already done, drafting a defense. Why? Because defenses and kickers are a dime a dozen. Sure, you can go get the best one, but nobody expected the Pittsburgh Steelers and the 49ers to be shattering teams last season, the year, or even New England. There's a lot of defenses that come out of nowhere oftentimes. And to be honest, just drafting a extra handcuff for the preseason, or a guy that could potentially have a breakout offseason and become a starter due to injury, in my opinion, is a better selection. I can wait on kickers and defenses. I can go and make a transaction before week 1 and play the matchups every single week at defense, which I love to do, and that's why I avoid drafting them. here. Regardless, we need perhaps more depth at running back and or more depth at wide receiver, in my opinion. At the wide receiver position, I see a lot of talent here. I really do like the idea of drafting Sammy Watkins in this offense. He could potentially be far better selection than he has been in the past. Last season, he did struggle because Tyreek Hill was gone for majority of the season, and he had to take number one coverage, which was tough. At the running back position, of the available players, it's tough, right? Do I want do I want a receiving back like a Jamal Williams, or do I want to go ahead and lock down my handcuffs like Giovanni Bernard? At this moment in time, I think I'm leaning towards the direction of taking Adrian Peterson, and not more or less hoping that Darius Guice falls apart, but assuming that he will. Outside of that, I mean, I could take another tight end here, but I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to lock down a running back here. Let's go. Ooh, you know what? Let's go with a PPR guy. Let's go with a guy like Nyheim Hines. He's going to catch the ball a bunch. Adrian Peterson relies upon the fact that everybody gets hurt in that backfield, and he's the only one touching the ball. Nyheim Hines could be a quick put him in because of the fact that the quarterback is Phillip Rivers. He could get a lot of work like Austin Eckler has in the past. Now, when we're looking at second quarterbacks, I don't really want to address that right now. I think that there are great guys that we can certainly wait on. Sure, a lot of these teams got Cam Newton as their second quarterback. You're not going to be able to play two guys like this in a certain in a specific week. I have a matchup-proof quarterback that plays in the NFC South. I am not worried at all about a second quarterback right now. If anything, I'm taking Phillip Rivers or Drew Lock way down the line. Not concerned about this at all. The tight ends are beginning to show again. I think I want to go ahead. I want to draft a tight end just in case Hayden Hurst falls apart, isn't going to be a stud. I need to have somebody. Mike Gesicki, it says it's a steal because it is. Going ahead, looking at running backs once again. You can never have too many running backs. I already have 5 running backs and 5 wide receivers. I think I want another one at this moment in time. The amount of work that Jamal Williams got in the passing game last year, I don't think that's going to disappear to any extent. I know A.J. Dillon's here. Not really convinced that he's going to take a lot of work. I'm going to go Jamal Williams, another one of these PPR guys who is still a handcuff to an extent. Want to go ahead, bolster up my my opportunities here. Now that we've gotten to the final rounds, people are looking for kickers and defenses, all this kind of jazz. I'm not really worried about that. I'm going to go with a quarterback, most likely. I can just wait, actually, but, I can't. So as of right now, I'm looking for somebody that's a high upside, someone that can win a job this offseason, someone that could potentially be a breakout receiver. I like the idea of going Cole Beasley here. He has a lot of upside. Mohamed Sanu. There's so many great wide receivers that are going to be left on the market available for pickup. But of the available guys, I need another wide receiver just to go ahead and lock down my roster. I think Cole Beasley is not a bad option. I think he was relatively a very good fantasy wide receiver last season. He produced very well in that offense. I'm just going to lock down Cole Beasley. I already have my second tight end. Let's go ahead. We'll draft Phillip Rivers in the hopes that, he puts together a pretty solid lineup and stuff like that. We'll worry about kickers and defenses later. I'm not even worried about this score because the score is 100% determined on whether I did draft a kicker and a defense, right? If a kicker and defense is put in there, the score is going to go up higher. But I don't care about that. I'm playing matchups from here on forth. Looking at my total roster construction, Joe Mixon, Nick Chubb, my studs. Then I have David Johnson at the flex. My 3 wide receivers, Cooper Kupp, Calvin Ridley, Michael Gallup, Hayden Hurst as my tight end with a backup of Mike Gesicki, who was a top 12 guy last season. You have Drew Brees, who's a stud. Running backs coming off the bench like Phillip Lindsay, Nyheim Hines, Jamal Williams. Wide receivers like Brandon Cooks on my bench and Sammy Watkins, who all have potential in their respective offenses. And then I have Phillip Rivers as Cole Beasley, 2 guys that have been consistent over the past couple years in fantasy that I really like. I like this draft. Was the approach the best possible? There are times that I could have probably made better decisions, but I will learn from my own mistakes. And we're just going to have to roll with, the punches. Now, let's say, for example, I restart this draft. Actually, you know what I want? I'm going to go through it really quickly. I want to see if I draft a wide receiver and instead of going double running back, what kind of productivity or opportunity I get at the running back position. Let's say, for example, but oh man, this draft doesn't really help me. They left so many good running backs. Okay, let's say, for example, we go Joe Mixon, and we pair it up with a wide receiver like, let's say we're just like, we're losing our minds and we want upside. We want Tyreek Hill monster upside. Let's say we do that. What kind of a draft do we have from here on forth, right? We look at the draft board here. We took 2 studs, certainly, right? But the running back position definitely got dwindled down. The guys that I was uncertain about drafting are still on the board, and I'm going to have to draft one of these guys. This is the problem. When you sit at the number 12 spot, I almost think you must draft double running backs, because it's going to hurt you if, in fact, you don't. Let's say, for example, okay, Andrew's going to play it, a little bit differently. Let's say I go Cooper Kupp here again, and then I draft myself Clyde Edwards, and I take a risk. We're going high upside, double running back, double wide receiver, similar to kind of where we had last draft, but a little bit more, disparity in terms of talent at each position. I still have David Johnson in the 5th. I still have the ability to draft one of these stud wide receivers, and or go and take let's say I draft a tight end. Let's say I love Darren Waller. I'm gonna go for him here, no problem, right? There is still a lot of depth available at the wide receiver. Brandon Cooks still sits here. There is guys. Okay, this draft is eerily looking similar, but the entire, I guess, decision that needs to be made is, who do you expect to have a higher level of production? A running back who's going to touch the ball 300 times potentially this season, or a wide receiver that last season missed a lot of time because of injury and is a very volatile guy like Tyreek Hill or Julio Jones? Regardless, I think the double running back approach at 12 is a very good decision. I want to go ahead and I want to honestly, I want to see a different first round. I want to really see how this looks. Okay. So let this go through the little animation and let's look at the draft board. Okay, this looks a lot better in my opinion. Okay, so 4 wide receivers, 7 running backs. I will be the 8th running back off the board, right? We'll go ahead and take care of this right now. Again, like I mentioned, let's just lock down 2 of these guys. If I went a quarterback here, it's going to leave me again with a lot of this kind of work, and I don't really want to deal with that at this moment in time. Sure, wide receiver position, I could go double wide receiver, but again, running backs are thin after a while. So let's say you go, listen, my rankings have Nick Chubb higher than everybody. I know that, but let's say, for example, I just want to go with the best players from last year. Okay, we go Nick Chubb, and let's go Aaron Jones. Okay, it doesn't matter. It's up to whether you like or dislike a player. It's not whether I'm just going through different strategies, trying to put together, in my opinion, the best possible rosters here. Still a lot of talent at running back, still a lot of talent at wide receiver. Again, DJ Moore sits here, Cooper Kupp. I can go ahead and do that, or I can lock down Todd Gurley if I believe in his potential this season. This would be the RB heavy set, right? If I went with a Todd Gurley or a David Johnson right now. Let's say, for example, I go DJ Moore, Cooper Kupp. Okay? Lock these guys down. Let's see where the draft goes. Obviously, David Johnson, Todd Gurley, they're going to be gone. Which running backs are available for Andrew? That's the question. The running backs that are available are going to be lesser guys. Again, the talent at running back is gone. We've gotten into the 4th and 5th round. I only took 2. That's fine. But you have to understand that when it comes back to you, now that I'm in the 5th round, I got to make a tough decision on who I want to keep. DJ Chark, I'll take. Quarterback, don't really worry about it. Running back, let's say, for example, we're all in on the Cam Akers train. No problem there. If that's the case, and you know for a fact he's going to be the starting running back, and you with certainty can ensure yourself. How many quarterbacks are gone? 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Wow, okay, that leaves me in a really good spot where I don't really need to draft a quarterback for a good amount of time. So where does that leave me at this end of my draft? I'm going to continue to gather depth. Brandon Cooks, no problem. James White, no problem. Great. I don't have a tight end yet. Again, quarterback tight end I'm waiting on because I know there are guys out here that are studs being slept on. It comes back to me in the 9th round. I go ahead and I can look and find Tyler Higbee as one of my favorite guys. Look and find a quarterback like Cam Newton sitting down here, or Matthew Stafford, who outside of the top four, in the first 8 weeks of the season last season, other than Lamar Jackson, I think Patrick Mahomes and Russell Wilson, no quarterback was better than Matthew Stafford in terms of fantasy production. We go ahead and let's say we want ourselves another. Let's say we take Kareem or Tariq Cohen. No problem. It's going to go back. It's going to come back. Then I will draft my wide receiver and quarterback tandem. Again, there are quarterbacks still here. Let's say I take Cam Newton here. Seems like a steal to me if you ask. And then let's pair him up with N'Keal Harry, a quarterback stack right there. Again, there's a lot of good decisions to be made, even if you go double RB here, because this is just setting the tempo. You can get look at this depth of wide receiver. These are two guys that could potentially be top 12 guys. DJ Chark was honestly fantastic last year, except for after he got hurt late in the season. Then everything went down. I still have Brandon Cooks, who in my opinion is going to be a 1,000-yard receiver this year. And then guys that, even if Cam Akers does not pan out, I have two of the PPR studs that just, with a minimal amount of touches, can produce great quarterback play. I probably have too many New England Patriots, but all in all, I don't think this is a bad draft at all. Let's do this again. Let's go ahead. Let's refresh. Let's try the number 12 pick again with a different variation of how the first round looks. Because again, the first round kind of determines where you're going to go, right? Okay, a little bit more different. 3 wide receivers now, and 8 running backs already taken off the board. Where does that leave me? That leaves me with, again, the idea that I got to take 2 running backs here. Let's do it, Josh Jacobs and Austin Eckler this time. Typically, the way that it looks is that I'm probably going to have a similar group of wide receivers that I typically have had. Cooper Kupp's still there. Calvin Ridley's still there. This might not be the case in your draft, but as of this moment in time, building the roster that I have, pretty happy with the way it's looking. The way that it comes back to me here, I'm probably not going to have a great running back selection. Yeah, let's say, for example, we undo the last selection, and instead we take Chris Carson. And we're like, you know what? Far and away, we want the guy that's going to touch the ball 270 times in Seattle's backfield. A lot of people are sleeping on him. No problem. We can draft wide receiver depth later because we always have done that in our respective drafts. And now we look at the wide receiver position and we still have depth here. And let's say, for example, we want to take an earlier quarterback. We want Russell Wilson. Boom, selected, done. Let's say we want to make sure that our stud tight end is off the board. Let's go early tight end as well. Let's see what kind of depth we can build. We already have our 3 blue chip running backs. Now we just have to fill wide receiver depth, and I don't think that's hard either. Brandon Cooks gets locked down. I still think I can wait on depth there. I could take Kareem Hunt here. I don't know. I can't find myself drafting a bad draft. Maybe you guys can tell me incorrectly. Maybe I'm full of myself right now, but I find that going double RB as the start seems to be the far and away best approach to the number 12th pick overall. It's just, 112 and 201, they most likely got to be double running back. If not, that 3rd round pick is going to determine your roster far and away. 3rd and 4th round, you're letting the rest of your league decide where you go. But either way, I'm pretty excited about what I was able to put together today. You can draft quarterbacks late, guys. You can draft tight ends late. You don't have to take early guys. It's all about understanding the value of, let me see here. Can I show drafted? The running backs in this area, if you see it above me, Melvin Gordon, James Conner, Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, Jonathan Taylor, Mark Ingram, David Montgomery, Devin Singletary. This area is going to determine the 2020 fantasy football season. One of these running backs is going to be a top 12 guy out of nowhere. And I think that happens every year. There's always a guy that is a little bit undervalued that a lot of people don't really see coming, and he produces. Last year was Mark Ingram. He could do it again this year. Last year, Chris Carson was one of these guys. He could do it again this season. The certainty of them potentially producing, great numbers is a 50-50 right now, right? Because we know that there are a lot of RBBCs and there's a lot of committees, and offensive coordinators might not want to feed a guy 270 touches in a year through the air on the ground and then give them the goal line carries if they're a guy like Melvin Gordon and they get hurt a lot, or James Conner and they get hurt a lot. Le'Veon Bell, and he has Adam Gase that's just signed Frank Gore. I mean, let's not forget, Frank Gore got more touches on the ground than Kenyon Drake in 2018. So taking all that into account, hopefully this helped you out a little bit from the number 12 spot. You can go ahead, you can try it yourself. There's different variations that you can put together, but I always like the idea of going double RB at the 12th spot. The next time we do a mock draft, hopefully I can get someone, to make it live. It's really hard to get 12 people into one room. Maybe you guys can help me out with that. Let me know if you're interested in mock drafting with me later this off season, because that could be a lot of fun and a great learning experience from everybody. But either way, thank you everybody for watching. Hopefully the tips and tricks that I kind of put together and demonstrated today help you guys out. Either way, thank you again for watching. Like the video if you like today's video. Subscribe to the channel for more fantasy football content, more mock draft content this off season. Otherwise, cue the music, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.